Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Steve the Vlogger. Today we're going to be talking about salamanders and newts. So this, I'm not even going to lie to you guys, this is easily the largest amount of effort I've put into a video just in terms of research and time. So I'm very excited to get into this today. I think we might learn some cool stuff today. I certainly did when I was doing the research for this. I think that salamanders and newts are one of the more underrated groups of animals on the planet. And I think they're just super unique from a defense behavior perspective, their life cycle. Let's just get into it. Let's start talking about it. A huge amount of salamanders and newts are poisonous, which is already pretty cool. But on top of that, their regenerative capabilities are pretty much, as far as I can tell, unmatched. I mean, they can grow back limbs, tails. There's even studies from the 60s where they have grown back portions of their brains, vital organs, you name it. They can grow it back. Ocular tissue. Given this is a massive energy sink, it's going to be taxing on the animal, but they can do it, which is pretty cool. So as an example, the first one I want to talk about is the Iberian ribbed newt. Now this thing's awesome. This thing's defense mechanism is like unlike anything that I've ever heard of before. What they can do is when some predator comes along and tries to swallow them, they can shove the ends of their rib cage out through the sides of their body and wedge themselves in the esophagus of whatever's trying to swallow them. Now I know what you're thinking, right? Damn, that's a pretty cool last hurrah, right? Last way to go. A big last FU to your predator. Personally, I'd like to go down more like Thorn from the Clone Wars. That's where you'd be wrong. They don't even die. Actually, it really doesn't even injure them that badly. Because their bones are coated in collagen, and because of their advanced regenerative capabilities, they're pretty much okay infection-wise. They don't have to worry about that. And within a short period of time, they're completely healed up and good to go. Even if somehow the predator manages to like choke down the Iberian newt, the ribs are coated in poison, which is released when the salamander shoots out its ribs. So even they brought MW2 martyrdom, dude. There's no way out for them. Oh, you get ready. At the end of the day, you just got to ask yourself, ribbed, but for whose pleasure, right? Final fun fact about them, they've been to space like not once or twice, but like 3 times in the past with the Soviets. So yeah, they're conquering the final frontier as we speak right now. I want to focus on one individual species because there's so much I can say about this one. This is the one I know the most about, and I think you guys are going to really find this super interesting like I do. What we're going to be focusing on is the spotted salamander. Spotted salamanders are named after the 2 lines of yellow spots they have going down the dorsal side of their body. These spots can tell you a ton about the animal itself individually, along with what it means for other animals interacting with them. So the bright yellow spots are an example of what scientists call aposematic coloration. So that's a warning sign to predatory species. Hey man, I'm kind of spicy. You bite me, you're gonna get, at the very least, really bad stomach ache, maybe some IBS. Something I found really interesting when I was looking up information about this is there was a study on museum specimens about the spots themselves, and what was concluded was that spotted salamanders that are healthy are supposed to have an equal amount on their dorsal side, right, on the left and the right. If they don't have an equal amount, then that could be an indication of like a bad life history or poor environmental conditions or genetic strain. So yeah, that's what their data suggested, was that an unequal amount of spots on the left and right side of a salamander corresponds directly with a lower body condition score, which just refers to how healthy the animal is overall. The spots on the spotted salamander are also an example of sexual dimorphism. While there is not a differing number of spots per sex, there is like a difference in the size. Male ones tend to have more chromatic, larger spots than the females. Spotted salamanders are part of a group of salamanders called the mole salamanders, otherwise known as Ambystomatidae for nerds, if you really want to speak in Latin. They spend most of their time underground, and they will come out to their vernal pools in the spring, which is where they mate, which we'll get into in a bit. The mating is going to be by far the weirdest part of this video. But yeah, the rest of the time they're hanging out underground. And I know what you're thinking looking at this animal is, how does this thing dig? This doesn't make any sense. Like, look at them. You'd be completely correct. Gold star. They do not dig. They're lazy. They are big fans of this work smarter, not harder thing. Rather than digging their own holes, these guys move into small mammal holes. So shrews and mice, that's some free real estate. They're going to move right in there with them. And what's the mouse going to do? The mouse is going to eat them? No, it's not. I'm poisonous. What's that mouse going to do? He's poisonous. You can't do anything to him. He's going to go right to sleep. So they go into a hibernation state called brumation, which is basically just reptile, amphibian hibernation. That's all it is. And they'll go down there and they'll go to sleep. Maybe they'll eat some inverts, which if you're a shrew, that's no good for you because you need those too. But too bad, I'm going to eat your food, I'm going to go to sleep, and you're going to put up with it. And if you touch me, oh, that's your problem, dude, because you might die. There was a study conducted in 2004, which I found hilarious, and the basis of it is how a second salamander approaches a burrow that already has one salamander in it. And if you're a shrew, ironically, your best course of action for keeping salamanders out of your burrow is to have another salamander in it. So there's really no escaping this. And what they found was that over 50% of the time, if a salamander entered a burrow that already had a salamander in it, they would just turn around and leave. Which, I guess they can't stand each other. After the winter ends, those salamanders will wake up at that first nice warm rain, and they'll head right back to that same vernal pool. There was a study that, actually there's a few studies that all came to the same conclusion, which I find super fascinating. Salamanders, especially the males, which are going to enter the vernal pool, their breeding site first, they enter and exit the same way every single time they go to their vernal pool. They're creatures of habit. So at the end of the day, I guess you can say salamander and man are not so different. So before I start showing some visual aids here, let me tell you where I got them from. My good friend Henry Wagner was nice enough to provide me with these really gorgeous images of both spermatophores and salamander eggs, which we'll start showing here. So I just want to give him a shout out first for allowing me to use these. He is an excellent photographer. So I'm going to tag his Instagram and his TikTok down below here in the description. You guys should check him out. He has a scope the size of my forearm, and he takes some gorgeous pictures. Seriously, check him out. Henry, thank you so much for letting me use these. Henry's passion for wildlife, and more specifically reptiles, was sparked when he served in an experimental marine unit back in the day, which paired up soldiers with different species of lizard. He was paired up with a squad mate named Chuck the Chuckwalla. And him and Chuck had a lot of good times together, and this is really what set him down the path of wildlife photography. So the reason that spotted salamanders tend to use vernal pools is because, one, there's no fish in them, so, I mean, their offspring have a higher chance of living. They will still be eaten by predaceous diving beetles and other kinds of inverts while they're in that pool, but it does, you know, eliminate the risk of fish coming by and just eating all the eggs. Two, it is filled with invertebrates and like aquatic invert larvae. I mean, like when those babies hatch, it's like a buffet. They can just eat everything. And then three, as it evaporates, which is what happens to a vernal pool, it's only there for part of the year, it kicks in the we gotta metamorphize response, and they just get the heck out of there while they can. What I found super cool is that there's a video on YouTube of somebody that took two different tiger salamanders, which, while they're not spotteds, they're part of the same family. Spotted salamanders are Ambystoma maculatum. Tiger salamanders are Ambystoma tigrinum, I think, and they're pretty close. So I think we could work with this a little bit. They took two larvae, they put them in two different fish tanks, one with higher water quality, and then they kept that water quality up with the filter and everything else, and then they started to emulate what happens to a vernal pool as it evaporates and goes away for the year with the other one. And the one with the perfect filtration just didn't turn. It just stayed in axolotl because there was just no need. Like, it's like, why am I gonna leave? But the one that had to get out of there, he started changing. I realized that captive animals can't really be used for like describing wild animal behavior, but I still thought that was interesting nonetheless. So that's not too weird, right? You know what is weird though, is how they actually mate. So the male spotted salamanders arrive on their breeding sites first, and they're gonna start immediately depositing what's called spermatophores, which just means they just kind of start walking around and start dropping semen on everything. And different salamanders of the male salamander group have different strategies for this. The spotted salamanders is just sort of like I'm gonna throw everything out and hope that something hits. Then of course the female comes and she'll sit on the spermatophore, and then the eggs are fertilized, and you get some baby salamanders. Yeah. I love how this one study I read describes spotted salamanders and their mating rituals as just being simple and almost like Neanderthals compared to some of the other ones. And they're not wrong, by the way, because they really do just sort of throw them everywhere and hope for the best. In comparison, you have tiger salamanders, which have like head games for days. So because tiger salamanders produce less spermatophores, they're more valuable. And that comes with like its whole other set of behaviors. So male tiger salamanders will pretend to be female ones, go over to male ones in their pond, and try to seduce them, so they'll drop the spermatophore so they can just like pretend to fertilize it. They're not doing anything. That tiger salamander who had his spermatophore wasted will probably think, hey, I did a great job. I'm going to go and eat something, or I'm going to go get a snack. And yeah, you just confirmed that, hey, when a female comes by, I've got the only spermatophore around. That being said, spotted salamanders do have their own ways of seduction. So what they'll do is they'll stay in the pond, and what's super interesting is, although they lack vocal cords, there's been a couple of studies that have both picked up they're capable of making noise underwater, which attracts females. And I wish I could describe it beyond just saying it sounds like bubbles popping, but in order to get more information about it, I'd have to pay $60 because this paper is blocked without purchasing a key for it. So we'll just say it sounds like bubbles popping and call it a day. So different amphibians will lay their eggs in different ways. So something like an American toad will choose to lay them in a string. A spotted salamander will choose to lay them in a big clump, which they then attach to underwater debris or something to give them an anchor while they develop. As you can see here in Henry's picture here, which, by the way, he's outdone himself here. It almost looks otherworldly. Like, looking at this, it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's gorgeous. Spotted salamanders, like most other reptiles and amphibians, don't really display any parental care behaviors, as far as I'm aware. If there is some indication of that or some evidence of that, I'd love to hear about it. I couldn't find any. They'll leave their breeding sites and they'll go right back into being a hobo for the rest of the year. Or the majority of it. They'll come back up every now and then. So that's pretty much it. That's where we're gonna end this video. I had a lot of fun making this one. I hope we learned some new stuff. I hope I've given you guys something of a appreciation for these animals, because I appreciate them a lot now that I've, like, especially after learning all this stuff. There's so much about them that is just so unique and so cool. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Steve the Vlogger out.